be fitting in with the rest of your. Any help with that?
I know, I'm just trying to fill in the page of this. Background.
Just looking at that walking. No. No. It's like.
Back at the end. Yeah. 3. Exactly. I want to select. If somebody, yeah, standing for it. Yeah. When you come in with drop data, be able to say, on like the, here's what ridership is. Say.
Oh, space is so.
Yeah, whatever. Last night. did I hear that? So that would be retro, it would just be retro. Yeah. It's the song. But it's better than having it, you know, a month after the. Great. Maybe it's just. I'll talk to.
All right, Pat, are we ready?
Yes.
Or should wait a few more minutes? I just didn't know if we were,
She's adjusting the air conditioning, that's more important.
oh, yeah, air conditioning is more important.
The Wi-Fi password, I can't do.
Okay, we're not ready yet. Adrian, you could probably do your speech and then maybe we'll be ready.
It's on. Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. In the unlikely event of an emergency, do not use the elevators. Please go to the stairwells located to my right, to my left. Fire extinguishers are located in the back of the room. An AED CPR certified, raise your hand, please. All right, those are your best friends. An AED machine is to my left, your right, through the break room right here. And we will meet in the event of an evacuation, we will meet at the Orpheum Theater. Who is CPR certified? I already asked that. Who will call 911? A couple of people. Okay, thank you very much.
Alrighty. Good afternoon. I am calling the meeting to order, the Valley Metro RPTA and the Valley Metro Rail. We're having joint boards of directors study session and I will kick it off. Pat, where am I going right now? Okay, I'm kicking it off to Jessica Medford Miller. My question this week.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. The study session this morning is a discussion surrounding the extension of Proposition 400E. As I think we are all aware, Proposition 400 at this time is Valley Metro's primary source of operating funds for our regional bus and our paratransit system. It is also the source of capital local match for our light rail expansions, for our bus investments, for our facility improvement programs, anything as small as purchasing equipment to as large as expanding our light rail system. The current Proposition 400 expires December 31st of 2025. In terms of long-range transportation system planning, though, the time is upon us. We are already making decisions and planning programs that would be implemented in the time span of the extension of Proposition 400. Just this past month, we actually entered into project development on our next light rail extension called the Capital Extension. That is the last light rail extension that would be funded with the existing Proposition 400. We're also continuing to submit federal grant applications for capital projects. I'll talk about some of those later today in the CEO update. Each of those grant applications, with the hope of obtaining anywhere typically between 50 and 80% of the capital funding through federal programs, requires that local match. That local match is Proposition 400. We've asked our colleagues from MAG here today to provide an update and an overview of the Regional Momentum Plan and to provide an understanding of what Prop 400 means for the future of transit, but also our regional multimodal transportation system, as this is our source of funding for highways, arterials, and transit. Just to do a little stage setting and identify the roles of MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, and Valley Metro. I know a number of our board members have formal roles on different committees at MAG, and we appreciate your service. And it's wonderful to have that perspective from those MAG committees here at the board table at Valley Metro. MAG is a federally designated metropolitan planning organization. Their tasking is to develop our regional transportation plan. This is true here in Phoenix, as it is every metropolitan area across the country over a certain population threshold. They develop our regional transportation plan through the Transportation Policy Committee, and I know we've got a couple of board members on the Transportation Policy Committee. They coordinate all of the planning activities around the development of our multimodal transportation system, including our air quality programs. They establish the budgets for the life cycle of those programs. So that is everything from the capital acquisition of vehicles to the operating cost of a bus route over its entire life cycle. They approve the regional transportation plan.
I'm sorry.
And the transportation.
Oh, okay.
Hello? Can we mute?
I did. Go ahead.
They
Sorry,
approved the
Jessica.
plan through the MAG Regional Council, which is comprised of elected officials from cities, towns, and tribes and Maricopa County. Valley Metro is an implementing agency, much like ADOT. We are the Regional Public Transportation Authority for the Valley. Our tasking is to design, build, operate, and maintain our regional transportation system, everything from light rail and streetcar to bus, paratransit, and demand responsive service. This board establishes our regional transportation policy and administers the half-cent sales tax proceeds deposited into the Public Transportation Fund. We often refer to that revenue stream as PTF in this room. This body also coordinates our regional service planning, our public outreach, our communication, and our marketing programs for all or most all of transit service delivered across the valley, including services delivered by some of our member cities. We also serve as a regional paratransit service provider. So that is what we do and what MAG does in a nutshell. I'd like to ask my colleague, Audra Kester-Thomas from MAG, who's here with John Bolin, and Ed Zerker, our incoming executive director of MAG, is going to be joining us shortly. Audra's going to walk us through what we have funded and the successes we've had with Proposition 400 and the outlook with and without the extension of Proposition 400. Thank you, Audra.
Well, thank you, Jessica, for that warm welcome. And on behalf of the 32 member agencies over at MAG, appreciate the audience today with such an important implementing partner of the Valley Metro Board of Directors. Today, we're going to talk, as mentioned, a little bit about some background, remind us of our successes here in the region and the prosperity for which we've been able to deliver because of a local commitment to transportation investments. Remind you a little bit about the investment plan. We won't spend a lot of time on that. I know you're well versed in it. And then more focused on the consequences of inaction and what is at stake if we're unable to extend Proposition 400, that dedicated half-cent sales tax, and then give you an update on our latest endeavors with enabling legislation. So first, starting with just a little bit of background, I think it's important to remind ourselves just what we've been able to deliver because of this important half-cent sales tax. First established by voters back in 1985. At the time, it was one of the first sales tax initiatives led in the country to have a dedicated funding source for transportation. At the time, Interstate 10 didn't even go all the way through our region. It was only finished in the 1990s. What you see illustrated on this slide is the last 40 years worth of investment, the value of that dedicated half-cent sales tax and what it's delivered. Certainly, you know, it's delivered the what we call the freeway loop system, loops 101, 202, and 303. The 51 and 143, it's helped to establish light rail with our rail partners at the cities of Mesa, Phoenix, and Tempe. Opening of streetcar just last year. What you don't see illustrated on this map are the iterative additions of lanes, the HOV network, new interchanges, but more importantly, the over 7 million operating service miles of bus that Proposition 400 supports every single year. It's also the dedicated funding source for ADA paratransit in this region. We've delivered over 250 miles of arterial streets. That grid network, which is very unique to this region, carries over half of our traveling public every day. It serves as the backbone of our bus transit network, as well as our bike and pedestrian infrastructure, as well as a number of important safety improvements and other quality of life factors. It matters tremendously to the prosperity that we've been able to deliver in this region. We use this slide an awful lot. This is not the first time I've showed this slide to this board. It's an important one. When you take just the freeway network alone, it saves you an average of 105 hours each and every year. That's 25% of time that you get back to spend with your family doing the things that you care most about. Over 80% of our jobs are located within a mile or two of a light rail corridor or a freeway corridor. I think we've just updated this number, and I believe it's close to 82% of our jobs are located within a mile or two of that high capacity infrastructure. And you also know how important transportation benefits are to unlocking the economic potential of land, particularly when it comes to high capacity transit investments, over 300% valuation increase over the last 20 years. Compared to a countywide average of about 150%, your quality of life report that was just updated recently demonstrates the economic value of important transportation investments, including light rail. It also matters because it's our competitive advantage. The Texas A&M Transportation Institute routinely puts Phoenix at the top of their list for least congested and best travel times, particularly when it comes to the movement of freight and goods. You'll see over and over this being our competitive advantage and why we've been able to land really important economic development, base economic development jobs here to this region, and why we continue to see this being one of the fastest growing, the fastest growing region, fastest growing county, and several of your cities being the fastest growing in the country. And also really important to this matter, and perhaps showing my bias a little bit, the public cares an awful lot. In fact, when we started the planning effort now over 5 years ago, we started with public engagement, better to understand what was most valued by our constituents so that we could preserve those values in the development of the plan. What we heard loud and clear from that research was people in this region very much appreciate and favor the transportation investments that have been delivered, perhaps because they've come from other places and see how much better we've done in delivering robust transportation and multimodal infrastructure. But more importantly, they're willing and want to continue to see its investment, to continue to expand, recognizing growth is going to continue. While they don't necessarily know who's always responsible for those decisions, unlike other parts of the country, we have an extremely favorable impression with the public and the transportation infrastructure this region has been able to deliver. And that is because the last 40 years of the half-cent dedicated tax. We'll talk now a little bit about the investment plan itself. It's important to remember that when we go about putting together this 20-year program, we put all funding sources available to the region in the mix. That allows us to better leverage and further extend the value of the dedicated half-cent sales tax, as well as more efficiently use the other funding sources we have available. Those other funding sources include several federal formula funds that come to the region, our share of the Highway User Revenue Fund, previously referred to perhaps as the gas tax, something that you're familiar with, or HERF. You'll see that as the smallest ribbon included in this slide. But you'll also see how large the dedicated half-cent sales tax ribbon is. It is projected over 25 years to be over $19.5 billion. And you'll see it makes up the lion's share of available resources. In putting together our program and working with our implementing partners, the Valley Metro and ADOT, you'll see now on the right side of your screen how the program came together and the proportion of funding given to each of the programs, as well as the list of regional programs that are identified at the bottom, identifying regionally significant kinds of investments here for the region. As it comes to transit, you'll see critically important to this endeavor is high capacity transit investments. You'll see here 2 extensions of light rail are included in this plan with partners at the city of Phoenix, certainly heading west out of I-10, and then Central Inter Corridor also heading west in Phoenix. We have 2 extensions in the 25-year plan of the streetcar heading out of Tempe and into the city of Mesa. And that's something we're really excited about, bringing a new mode of transportation to the region in bus rapid transit. In the 25-year plan, we have 3 different corridors identified of bringing a really valuable tool that we don't currently use in our toolbox and for which the region is supporting with our partners. Unfortunately, after successfully delivering enabling legislation through the House and Senate last year, we were met after the 4th of July with an unexpected veto by Governor Ducey of House Bill 2685. We are in an unfortunate situation, one that's quite unexpected and puts a lot of uncertainty to us and our implementing partners, including, I know, issues this board has been dealing with. And that is not a non-confirmed long-term revenue source and not having the ability to rely on a continuation of the dedicated half-cent sales tax, which is so important to being able to make long-term decisions. It adds a considerable amount of risk and uncertainty, not only to us at MAG, but to our implementing partners, including Valley Metro and ADOT. And that's why it's so important for us to endeavor as quickly as possible to garner enabling legislation and allow our voters the opportunity to weigh in on this matter. If we are unsuccessful, the region loses more than half the available funding. The sales tax comprises over 50%. We will be left only with the federal formula funds that come to us with many strings attached. Why that's important, particularly to the Valley Metro Board, is those federal formula funds are not eligible for operating bus transit. The only available revenue source left will be local funds, which is how this region initially delivered transit, its initial transit investments. What we'll be left with is strings attached to funding and ultimately likely putting these resources only at our most critical safety matters, those that have critical safety related rehabilitation matters. And at a time with unprecedented growth being the fastest growing region in the country, that's just an unacceptable answer. So let's talk about what the consequences will be to our economy. After the veto last year, our elected leadership got together quickly and gave us a lot of assignments and homework for which to endeavor to find a successful path forward. One of them was direction to facilitate an economic impact analysis to better understand exactly how valuable extending the half-cent sales tax is, not just to our local economy, but to the states. What we see here is tremendous benefit brought. You'll see that there's a decrease in congestion across all modes and all purposes. In fact, our speeds across all modes and purposes increase 1 or 2 miles an hour. That may initially not seem like a lot, but I want you to consider every single trip you're going to be taking today, every single trip your neighbor is going to be taking today, and then the next 365 days over the course of the next 20 years. And in aggregate, that's totaling benefits over $73 billion in time travel savings. You'll see a growth in transit ridership. Why? We're expanding the transit network. It was the top priority expressed by our public when we endeavored in the plan development process, and we see a reciprocal benefit that we are providing more service to more people. Taken in whole, we're getting a tremendous return on investment from the continuation of this dedicated half-cent sales tax, more than doubling the economic benefits to the region. And ultimately, if we're unable to successfully extend the dedicated half-cent sales tax, we'll be losing our competitive advantage. Local business sales will decrease by $4.5 billion each and every year. We'll lose nearly 32,000 jobs each year, 71% of which fall into median and high wage thresholds. This is an important point because you as elected officials at the local level have endeavored and worked very hard to build base economic employment at a high level. And we're just starting to see so much success in that endeavor. We're putting that at risk without continuing the dedicated half-cent sales tax. Businesses will be hit with higher traveling costs totaling $40 billion, and shipping and logistics costs will increase by over $4 billion. There's also, of course, consequences to mobility. This is the discrete capital projects included in the investment plan. You'll see a variety of modes serviced within our plan. It includes, of course, high capacity transit, as I have already mentioned, but important investments to extend our freeway network, finish out our HOV network, as well as tremendous investment as well in our arterial network. This is a whole package to serve the entire region, addressing our most pressing needs, which quite frankly are diverse. And depending on each and one of your communities, you have different needs. For a region as large as ours, this is challenging, and that's why we need so many different tools in our toolbox. When we look specifically at the transit network, you'll see this as familiar. This is your current, or at least last year's bus network serviced here in the region. When you take a look at what routes are either wholly funded by the current Proposition 400 half-cent sales tax or partially funded by the half-cent sales tax, you'll see those identified in red on this slide. There's a tremendous amount of service supported by Proposition 400, and these would be the routes at risk if we're unable to continue the half-cent sales tax. Cities will now be left attempting to find the resources available to continue this service. And more importantly, I think we think this actually underestimates the amount of service that's really at risk. As I mentioned already, Proposition 400, or the half-cent sales tax, is the dedicated revenue source to service and fund ADA paratransit. Cities would also have to be picking up that cost, which we expect they're not able to find in their local budgets, would continue to shrink and contract the system. That's a tremendous concern, especially when you think about who you're servicing. The last origin and destination study from Valley Metro identifies approximately 67% of your riders as those who do not already have a dedicated vehicle at their exposure to be able to get to their jobs, to be able to get to their medical appointments, to get to school. So ultimately, not being able to extend Proposition 400 is really ultimately going to be felt with our most vulnerable immediately. And that's, of course, a major concern. So if we're unable to extend the dedicated half-cent sales tax, we'll be coming to a standstill. Instead of expanding coverage and improving coverage, or excuse me, improving service quality, which was the highest demand expressed to us through our public engagement, we're going to be faced with discontinuing existing service or contracting the system overall. We will lose the dedicated funding source for the federally required ADA paratransit. And the region will lose out on federal discretionary funding opportunities, which is a very inconvenient truth at a time where the nation, Washington, D.C., has an unprecedented investment in transportation in the bipartisan infrastructure bill and IIJA. Those dollars for which this region has demonstrated tremendous success historically in chasing will go to other states and other regions. Finally, there are consequences to our air quality. This is our MAG region. We are larger than the state of Maryland, if that is helpful to provide for context. We are in several non-attainment areas for air quality. One of those, and perhaps the most concerning of recent, is in ozone. You'll see that outlined in purple, covering a large percentage of our planning area. We are currently, recently I should say, moved up in escalation for standard for ozone non-attainment. And that is to a degree of moderate. We have until next year to meet that deadline of attainment, or else we are faced with an additional set of thresholds and regulatory measures for which will impact business as well as how we do business in this region. If we're unable to meet attainment by next year, EPA will move us into the serious category, and this is where the impacts to business become even more dramatic, and where we're nearing some of the same level of regulation that our neighbors to the west have demonstrated. If we're unable to reach attainment by the end of the year or into 2027, we'll be moved into a severe category, which is a very unfortunate, and what we want to be able to do is avoid ultimately that trajectory. Just to do a quick review of what ozone looks like in this region, this is a monitor example of one of the ozone monitors in our region. You'll see that navy color that represents sources from outside of this region of ozone. It's the largest. That makes it really difficult for us to be able to tackle the ozone matter in this region because a lot of it is without our control. When you isolate those things that are within our control and for which our measures ultimately are intended to mitigate, you'll see those large categories identified here. That includes our transportation network as well as construction. That's why the connection to our investment plan and continuing transportation investments in this region is so important. Not only are we delivering continued mobility improvement, getting folks to where they need to go more effectively, the same priorities of the public and you from your own communities align really well with our air quality attainment strategy. And so we get dual benefit by investing or continuing investment in transportation. Those congestion mitigation aspects and those strategies included in our plan actually help us towards our attainment. This also includes, of course, bus transit. Transit is a critical component in providing not only options, but addressing our ozone non-attainment issue, which is why it's so important that we advance and continue our transportation and investment portfolio. So I'll now move to our enabling legislation. I think this is important to start off, and I know there's some new board members here too. You might ask yourself, what is enabling legislation? It's a term we use often over at MAG, so I wanted to walk through and provide just a little context on what that actually does and why we need it. First and foremost, the state is the one who provides authority for local taxation. We currently in Maricopa County do not have that authority directly from the state to be able to go directly to a ballot to extend what in our case is a 0.5-cent sales tax. All other counties in the state do, except for Maricopa County, which is why we find ourselves working with our partners down the street. Enabling legislation does a few things. It provides authorization to place a countywide ballot to extend the dedicated 0.5-cent sales tax. It puts into statute the Regional Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Investment Plan, the plan that we have built with Valley Metro, as the guidance of what the 0.5-cent sales tax ultimately delivers. It calls for that plan to allocate 100% of the expected revenues from the sales tax. It institutes and delineates the process by which we can make changes over the course of the 20-year horizon. It makes administrative updates, including to population thresholds, recognizing how much Maricopa County has grown over the last 20 years. And it affirms the Transportation Policy Committee's role in not only the development, but updates to the plan. It's important to note, and I want to recognize Supervisor Sellers, who currently serves as our TPC chair, also serving on your board here, tremendous advocate for transportation, and we're so lucky to have his leadership. The Transportation Policy Committee was first established by MAG back in 2003 as a public-private partnership, recognizing the importance of commitment and partnership in delivering transportation. It was later codified in state statute in 2004 and includes 6 members appointed by the legislature representing different elements of the business community. Critically important to our success, certainly, and certainly instrumental in being able to deliver ultimately the plan. I want to note much of our focus currently down at the legislature is additional elements for which members of the legislature might be interested in adding. And so you'll see here a lot of our conversations, and I know conversations that have occurred at this board have been different members' interests for legislative intent to include in what is already a very highly technical bill for the enabling legislation. So where do we stand currently? We have 2 active bills in the legislature. We have House or Senate Bill, 1246, It's a striker sponsored by Mr. Cook on a Senator Farnsworth bill. This is a bill that has passed out of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee as well as out of the House Rules Committee. We also have another bill, Senate Bill 1102. It's also a striker sponsored by Mr. Livingston. This bill has successfully passed out of the Appropriations Committee. There are differing details in both of them. They both have the fundamental infrastructure of last year's bill, a lot of the details that associate how we do business with the Department of Revenue, who points the funding, of course, to our implementing partners and those sorts of details. But I think the 2 important points, and I think we'll land on this slide, certainly answer any further questions that you might have, is neither bill currently has the funding allocations set by the plan. You all know that the investment plan that was created and unanimously adopted and is air quality conformant allocates 100% of the revenues coming or projected to come into the region. Every single dollar is allocated to a specific project. And in the case of our high capacity projects, our large ones, to a specific phase of project development, whether that's right-of-way acquisition or actual construction. Every single dollar projected to be received through the sales tax is allocated. And so that's why those percentages are so important. They actually represent the needed funding to deliver the plan that was developed. And that is 37.4% for freeways, 22.2% for arterials and our programs, and then 40.4% for transit. In addition to neither bill hitting those allocations as we need them to be, each bill has several elements for which impede MAG as well as our implementing partners' ability to implement the plan. We've had a lot of conversations, a lot of successful conversations. We're heading in the right direction with members of the legislature. We've had several stakeholder meetings for which MAG and Valley Metro have participated in. We're heading in, I think, a constructive direction on that front in articulating what concerns we have and how important it is for this region and all of you to be able to implement the plan. And hope that our continued success and certainly the trajectory we're on will ultimately land this year, as we all are committed to do, delivering enabling legislation and getting this, most importantly, to Maricopa County voters as soon as possible. So Jessica, that ends our formal presentation. Ed's certainly joining us now, and I think between the two of you can answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Audra, for an excellent presentation. So I want to remind us that we're focused right now on enabling legislation. Once we have enabling legislation through the House and the Senate, it must also be approved by the governor and ultimately voted upon by voters of Maricopa County. So the plan and whatever is included in that legislation must be structured in such a way that it's met with gubernatorial approval, but it also has to deliver something for each of the communities we serve. The strength of this plan is that it is multimodal. It has transportation solutions for every community that reflect their unique mobility needs, their stage of development, including highways, arterials, and transit. And within transit, we've got multiple mobility solutions in that toolkit: light rail, streetcar, bus, paratransit, and demand responsive service. That is the beauty of the plan. And this is the plan and the program that we are working with the legislature to advocate for and protect so that we can ultimately implement this program. With that, I want to open up the floor, Madam Chair, members of the board, for your questions, for your comment. My colleagues at MAG and I and Alexis Tamaron-Kinsey, Director of Government Affairs, would be happy to answer any questions for you.
Thank you. I want to first thank Supervisor Sellers for advocating for Valley Metros and many other items at MAG, but and those that represent, I know there are several of us that sit on MAG in different capacities. So I want to thank everybody for their service. Questions? Supervisor Sellers.
I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but right now, the position we're in is we need to get a vehicle out of the legislature that we can work with. And hopefully one of these two bills will get to the point where we get to the budget discussions where we can now fine tune to get the things in there that really have to be in there for us to get approval by our voting public. The other frustration that I'm suffering with what's currently going on is they're talking about allowing us to put this out to vote in 2024. I don't think they understand how critical timing is on this issue. So there are a number of us that are also talking about a plan B if we don't get something we can work with.
Thank you, because you were leading me into that question. What happens if we don't, neither bill matches the plan allocation? I think that's probably one of the discussions we'll need to have as to that the possibility is there. But before I even go down that road, one of the questions I have is, why is Maricopa County the only county that needs state legislation to allow us to go to the voters? What is the history, and what do we need to do in the future to advocate to not be in that space?
Well, I think, Madam Chairwoman, we all appreciate that question very much. I know Supervisor Sellers feels the same. And so I will do my best to provide a little bit of history and certainly allow you to ask any follow-up questions. So one of the important parts to remember is that Maricopa County was the first to establish the half-cent sales tax. And at the time, as you all know, it was to build the freeway system for which the state was unable to do themselves. And so one of the very unique parts of our beginning history is having to create statutes 40 years ago that demonstrated an extremely unique specific position, which is a local region funding the State Department of Transportation's build out of highway and freeway infrastructure. So that, I think, sets the tone for why things are a little different and more complicated, particularly for this region. And so there's a series of complex statutes that articulate that unique relationship for which only Maricopa County really has. Our friends down in Tucson aren't focused on freeway investments, they're delivering arterial infrastructure. There are other statutes that provide that opportunity directly at the county level to go and establish up to 1 cent of a sales tax and go directly to voters. That's through Regional Transportation Authority, or RTA. Our friends in Tucson use that vehicle, and for which they're probably endeavoring to expand actually in the next couple of years as well. So I think it is important to remember that we have a unique relationship with the Arizona Department of Transportation in the first place. And then as we built out a program and made it multimodal, helping to deliver light rail and transit, regional transit service in this region, added statutes later that were able to articulate the partnership we have with Valley Metro in implementing the transit part of the program. And so we have a lot of complexity for which the Department of Revenue, as well as our implementing partners, need established in state statute. That being said, Supervisor Sellers and our board has given us direction in the past to hopefully remedy this in the future. It's not necessarily an easy answer.
Go ahead, Supervisor Sellers.
Yeah, I think it's important for this group to know that, and I think you probably already know this, but one of the most negative things that we're facing with the legislature is feelings about transit. But we really need to be doing a better job of letting them know why transit absolutely has to be a part of this plan. And there are a number of reasons. Very good presentation today on the impact that has on a number of things for us that make it absolutely a critical part of this plan. But we need to be communicating that to our legislators so that we can get something through that truly is not only workable, but we can get approved by our voters. You know, if you take Phoenix, Tempe, and Mesa out of the mix, we're not going to pass this. And transit is a key element in each one of those communities.
So me representing the city of Phoenix, transit is definitely one of the large pieces that we're concerned with. And as the reports say, there's key legislators that don't want transit in it. So are there ways to overcome that obstacle to get a bill that works for us as a whole collective approved?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Pastor. Jessica's been talking with them. I've been talking with them. These guys have been down there. You all have talked with them. I think we've made progress on the issue of transit. The issue we have with the current majority in control of the legislature is a very specific focus on light rail, number one, coupled with a desire for more freeways, number two. And so a lot of the work has been at the legislative level to try to move things out of light rails, particularly, and over into freeways. But as Audra and John have explained, the plan was put together as a whole thing. Right? You can't, it's like Jenga. When your kids play Jenga, and you can take one piece out here and there, but pretty soon the thing becomes unstable and falls apart. And that's really what the plan is. It's a whole built together with pieces. And so while individual members don't like individual pieces, we've been working for them to understand the totality of it. I think the persistence of the staff that you have employed and sent down there has been important. I think the sort of the resolute nature of the elected officials about, look, this is the plan, and any individual city could find one part of the plan they don't particularly care for or they don't feel is their big thing. But we have this history in the region of working together and understanding that what's good for one of us when we agree to it is good for all of us and we stand for it. So short answer is continuing to stand, continuing to be resolute in defending and espousing transit as a viable option. And then we're going to try to just keep working that, but at some point we'll see how far the legislature will go towards these numbers. And then we'll be back with a decision for our elected officials about what we do.
Thank you, Ed. So we have been and will continue to meet with our legislators most every day right now to educate them about the value of transit, build some level of understanding about what our transit system is and does and what the prospects are for that system over the next 20 years. These are state legislators. They are not engaged with bodies like this or individual member cities, where we're really talking about the mobility and the development needs of specific communities. So there has been a base level understanding that needed to be built. I think we've done that. Now we're making progress. It's slow. It is an uphill climb, but we are making progress. We've come a long way since 1122, which was the basis for 1246, in which 5% was allocated to transit. We're not yet at 40.4, but I am much more optimistic than I was a few months ago that we would actually get there, but it takes that constant drumbeat and that creation of some recognition that our regional transportation plan is not a cafeteria style program. It's a comprehensive program with multiple modes and very specific projects. And you can't just move money from one bucket to another and effectively execute a comprehensive 20-year plan. We've had a lot of strength and support from many of our legislators. So we are calling upon them and spending time with them, just as we are our legislators who would seek to remove or reduce the transit allocation.
Laura?
Okay, I have, here's how it's gonna go. Vice Mayor Brown, Councilmember Stibb, Councilmember Tomochoff. Who else? And Councilmember White. Anybody else? Okay.
Chandler.
Chandler. Oh, OD. Okay. Vice Mayor Brown, you're up.
Thank you so much, Chair. I appreciate the dialogue, and I certainly must concur that we are talking about doing the right things. I loved earlier when it was said how the public values transit, and it's a very important aspect to it. But the realization, of course, is that the only way this goes anywhere is if we can get a bill onto the governor's desk. That's the first hurdle. It's my understanding that both of these striker bills are anticipated to be amended. One of them where transit would be around 39% and one where it would be around 38%. We haven't heard staff. I assume there's some reticence to talk about negotiations. But if that's even remotely close to accurate, I understand that there might be some component of the bill that would allow for a 5% flexibility in any bill that would land on the governor's desk. In other words, it might be a possibility to move funding between the various highway, arterial, and transit programs. And so I'm wondering if staff has looked at that, has Meg looked at that, and whether that would help adjust the buckets to make the percentages work and make the MEG plan implementable.
Madam Chair, members of the board, John Bolin with MAG. We've had really productive conversations, and I think it's fair to say that as we continue to work with the legislature, a lot of our efforts are focused on education. Education has been an extraordinarily powerful tool. I can't emphasize it enough. All our partners, certainly Jessica and Alexis, have been able to move the ball quite a bit. Our guiding star continues to be implementation of the plan. And so as we work with various members of the legislature, as we work through various iterations of the bill, that has been our guiding star. So we're still very much in the sausage making process, still very much working on the education component. But I think it is fair to say that we have had really positive discussions. I think the legislature is also coming to terms with transit's important. Members of both caucuses want to expand transit. And as we've been able to get those messages out and they've heard that, we've been able to move the needle. So we still have some work to do, but we do feel comfortable that we're moving in the right direction. And at the end of the day, we do have good direction. That implementation of the plan is our guiding star.
And specifically to Councilman Brown's, he's got good information about where those transit numbers are. Those are the percentages that are being talked about in both bills. Our position is really until we see an entire bill, we can't say whether that really is adequate because some people have coupled higher percentages with transit with zero flexibility to move anything. Others have a little bit of flexibility, but the numbers are still too low. There's also some complicating factors about how much money people want to put into freeways versus transit that makes it difficult to implement the plan. So you're absolutely right, Councilman Brown, but we got to see the whole package before we can say it. But your information is pretty good.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Tomachov.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a little befuddling to me, the focus, and I agree with the focus of the legislature. There's been a huge focus on affordability, affordable housing, access to employment, and trying to, reach out to the population that's underemployed, doesn't have sufficient housing, and there is no more affordable mode of transportation than transit. That doesn't exist in so not everyone has access to a car. And I'm just wondering why the conversation seems to be kind of fall off a cliff after you get to access to employment and affordable housing. It truly doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So what I'm wondering is, you mentioned a number about the number of paratransit customers that don't have access to a vehicle. Do we have data for the number of the rest of the population that don't have access to a vehicle? And it's also kind of a thing with the younger people that don't have cars, don't want to drive. And it's really kind of it seems to make a lot of sense that if we're really concerned about, access to employment and affordable housing, that transit is an actual key piece of all of that.
I've been using this statement too much, but I'll say it here, from your mouth to God's ears. That's exactly the message we're trying to communicate. And you're right on the money with messaging.
Transit is not a luxury. It's a lifeline for a lot of people in our community. So,
Yeah, and just to further that, Chairwoman Pastor, members of the board, and Councilmember Tomachov, really great question. We'll be waiting on the census for their final 2020 numbers, where we'll be able to have a more acute understanding of the composition of individuals in this region for whom don't have a dedicated car, or more importantly, are in what we would call a car deficient household. There's more adults than there are available cars. So that information is just being processed with the Census Bureau. Valley Metro is also initiating their next origin and destination study, for which MAG is partners on. That information feeds our very sophisticated, world-renowned model, for which we're able to identify the implications and understand how this whole thing works together. We focused a lot today about how this multimodal plan works together. It works together as a system, not just the freeway system or the transit system. It works together as a whole, and that transportation model, of course, is able to articulate those needs. I'd also indicate that it's not just our underserved, our students who may not have access to a car, but what we're continuing to hear a lot, and perhaps you are as well at the local level, is workforce issues and getting folks to where they need to go in terms of jobs. We're hearing a lot of concerns, particularly in our East Valley, as well as our far West Valley, especially as we see the bloom of industrial activity and warehousing along the 303 corridor, particularly, that our friends in economic development are really struggling to work with business partners to get employees to those large footprint locations, and transit's what they're asking for. And so what we're hearing is not only a continued transportation or transit need expanding the service that we already have, but we're seeing it as an economic development tool and a workforce strategy for, again, a region that's blooming in economic development.
Was your 67% number for paratransit users or transit users?
Transit users, so that's Valley Metro's origin and
So
destination.
2/3 of all transit users, not just dial-a-ride, but everything, 2/3 don't have access to a car. I think that was part of your
Yeah,
question.
that was,
wasn't
thank
it?
you thank you, Ed. If I could just, with the student thing, I mean, and I know many of us have, you know, I mean, I had ASU, I paid tuition. And even though my student had access to a car, the cost to even park a car, you know, maybe not necessarily at a university, but a lot of places downtown and other places is not affordable for people to do. So they still, even though you may have a car, you still may need to rely on transit to get to school and to get to work.
Yeah. One other piece, and I know Chairwoman Pastor can speak to this very much as a former school board member, the bus system and light rail, but the transit system in its entirety is a huge mover of students, particularly in the Phoenix Union District, but throughout the valley too. And so our high school and younger students are also using transit to get to school without access to a car, so.
Councilmember White.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for this comprehensive presentation. I just jumped on azleg.gov to put my comments on each bill as we're speaking about it. I didn't want to let this opportunity pass. I think that's important for all of us to just jump on the legislature's website and comment on the bills. I think one thing I want to pull off, it's to really speak more to the young people and a part of the impact of this situation, because you talked a little bit about air quality and ozone unattainment. And it'd be great if we could go to the EPA and say, hey, you judge us like every other city in the country, but we get so much more sun than they do. So those standards are really kind of out of whack for where we live anyway. But when we go beyond that, if we don't fund transit appropriately and we fund highway too much, we will be in the unattainment space permanently. And so I don't think that anybody is really matching apples to apples. They're trying to match apples to oranges because we are being judged at a standard with just the amount of sun we receive in this area. And we have to get this ozone attainment. And so a lot of our youth are really being driven by this, you know, we want to have a world to live in. They really want to not have to own a car. They don't want a large carbon footprint. But if all we're doing is investing in roads, I think that we're going to put ourselves in a bag we can't get out of, and it's a really wet paper bag if we don't plan ahead. So I'm very concerned about, you know, air quality and unattainment, and really, you know, I think the EPA is a bigger fish down the stream. But I think what we can bite off right here is really making sure that these boundary conditions we can't mitigate are put in an education space where they can really bite and chew this information up. And I don't think that's information everybody can wrap their hands around it and truly understand. So I don't know where we can step in and give them better information, but we have to pay attention to that because this is just a region that's going to get so much more sun. And if we aren't investing in transit, and our transit in Valley Metro looks to be super clean, it's moving so clean. You know, you don't see a lot of transit out. Most of the buses are. So when you think about that, we're going in the right way with what we're doing, but we have to make sure the legislature sees, knows, and understands why. And I appreciate the education efforts, and we need to continue to speak truth to power. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Tremendous. And very timely. On Monday afternoon at 1 o'clock, Audra and our air quality expert are going to be, they've been called to testify before a new committee at the legislature on air quality. And what you said is basically distills what we are saying to them, which is about ozone. But one of the messages is Prop 400 is one of the easiest things that the legislature can do to put us on that path towards ozone attainment. Easiest thing they can do. Now, it has to be done with transit, and we're trying to get that message. So if you can come testify to that, at least watch, at least watch. You got to work. I know. But at 1 o'clock, it should be on the AZ Ledge site. It's the Joint Committee on Air Quality. It's got some name, but it's a joint committee. I'd invite you to listen and contribute, and we actually want to connect you with our air quality person after this.
Thank you.
You have another assignment. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you so much, Chair Lady. I just want to just put some comments on the record, just to have on the record. Perhaps there could be comments after it. Thanking Supervisor Jack Sellers for his work, his continuous work, and his ability to educate and move this issue forward, and his boldness to stand out in the midst of hundreds of people to speak out. And thank you for your leadership for that. We appreciate it. I know that on Chandler side, I was talking to a constituent and they happened to hear about what was going on. She happened to be a single mom and she goes to work every single day and she's raising 3 kids. And every day she takes this transportation to get back and forth to work. And every year the transportation just got better for her. So now she has a full system of how to get to work back and forth. She works full time, but she still needs a little bit of help, a little assistance from the government. And so it gets really difficult for her when her kids have to play sports and things like that and get in there. But she was very grateful because of what we do here. And she said to me that, she said, if they take this away, what would that mean to my quality of life? And she began to just discuss all the things that how her family depends on mobility, and this type of mobility, because it's affordable and it's reasonable and it's close enough for her to attain. And the woman shared this long story with me. And by that time, we're both in tears, just like thinking about her situation, thinking about the power of what this does. It not only, it changes people's lives when you decide to try to attempt to take away this lifeline. See, we can sit behind a desk and make a decision to say no. But then we have that constituent who depends, her and her 3 children, to get to work every single day that she commutes into another community in which she resides in our community. Those are the issues that we're weighing. We're playing with people's lives. This is a true lifeline. And I shared with that constituent, and I said, we're going to do everything we can to fight for you and your 3 little babies, who has a bright future ahead. We spoke, I can tell you this since I speak on behalf of Chandler, that the mayor and all of the city of Chandler council members supports this proposition. The devastating impacts to our community alone would set us back with a replan, reposition. And we may be a larger city, but I'm thinking about the other moms, single dads. I'm thinking about those that needs care, going to doctor's appointments, those that don't have the ability and the mobility of all their activity of their limbs. They may be disabled, they may be a senior, they may be a veteran, they may be someone, all these different types of people ride in our transit system. And to think that legislator could weigh these things as an anomaly that we don't need to continue to push forward to make sure we have these things done. Chandler continues to support this effort. I think legislators need to understand that this is devastating to communities, and the impacts and the comments that they put on record that I read is horrible. It's disgusting. It is the threat to our lifeline. It's the threat to our quality of life. It's a threat to how we believe and how we see things as human. Some things get past all these things, but when do we get to the human nature, the human behavior of everyday movement? This supports that. And it impacts our lives too, because now we lose 105 hours a year spending time with our family. I know my wife desperately want me at home with her. Yeah, sorry, got real deep. My bad. strike that from the record, but but we need to understand that these have human implications, not just social implications, not just quality of life implications, but this is what we do. But I think that if we can really continue to push the forth and we continue to let them know that you are not only threatening your family's life, you're threatening everyone else's. What you choose to do in your household is your business, but what you choose, how you choose to rule that impacts my household, I have a problem. So let's continue to do the hard work that we're doing. I didn't want to repeat all the devastating impacts that I wanted to kind of go through, but I just wanted to share you a story of a constituent that was concerned, that cried about this and understood the impacts of this and how this can ultimately alter her life. Thank you.
Any other questions? Supervisor Sellers?
Yeah, just a comment to build on something that Mr. Zerker said about every community having different priorities. People need to remember that this plan was put together over a period of 18 months to get approval of every community in this region. We had unanimous approval for this plan. If you change this plan significantly, you have to go back through that entire process again. You really don't want to do that. So, I understand the people at the legislature that are saying, well, I'd like to see this or this or this, but they don't realize what went into putting this plan together and what it takes to have every single community in this region say, yes, I'm okay with this. I buy into this plan. Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
Jack, you touched on this earlier and we kind of skirted through it, which is the 2023 election component of this. Yesterday at TPC, we had to authorize kind of a special one-off to advance a project that was in jeopardy through the extension of Prop 400 because the construction costs have skyrocketed so much through the over time. Had Prop 400 extension been gone to the voters in 2022, we could have saved tens of millions of dollars on this one particular project. And we're seeing that over and over with every one of the roadway construction projects kind of going forward. And I realize that this is not the freeway transit agency, but these things are kind of all connected together, that when we stall the planning moving forward, it has significant financial implications on what we're able to accomplish. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that if we can push for the 2023 election of this, we will be able to do more with the money that we have already allocated in the program. And that will also then benefit Valley Metro in its ability to look forward for capital projects, for the transit life cycle program, the buses that we're replacing, et cetera. So that's one aspect of this. And the other piece that I think we've kind of fallen off the discussion is we're talking about a 20-year transit program. In 2004, microtransit did not even exist. But today there are multiple cities sitting at this table that are looking at microtransit programs. Some of us are piloting them very successfully. That we don't know what the world of transit is going to look like 20 years from now. And for us to find that kind of efficiency that moves our residents around, kind of to OD's point, we don't know who needs it until we put it out there and we move it forward. So I know I'm preaching to the choir of the 19 of us that are sitting around here, plus all the staff, but this idea of transit not being important, or it doesn't affect us. So I've talked to people coming from the west side who sit in traffic that used to start backing up at 75th Avenue, then started backing up at 99th Avenue, now is backing up at Saraville Avenue. which is like 165th Avenue, if you will. There's a great deal of frustration by those folks, but I remind them that if the city of Phoenix is able to move the light rail extension to 75th Avenue or 79th Avenue along the I-10, wouldn't you rather just drive to there, hop on the light rail and take that to your destination as opposed to sitting in that traffic all the way through? So even though it doesn't affect our individual cities, this is a regional transportation plan that we can all take advantage of. So even though light rail may not be coming to the west side in its entirety, we will benefit from that. So we can't lose sight. We hear this a lot. Well, our city doesn't have, or it doesn't affect, we're not affected by that, but we all are affected by it. And I think we have to just keep the pressure on the legislature. Obviously, MAG is doing a great job. We've moved this from 0% to 20% to 38 or 39%. So, we're continuing to do that. We just can't let up on it. And I just want to applaud the MAG staff for doing the great job that they're doing.
Any other comments? Don't see any. Oh, Councilmember Klein.
So I'm over here in the corner, hiding behind Bill.
me.
I'm hiding behind Bill.
My list.
It's okay. I wasn't on your list before, and this might seem like a really dumb question, since I'm kind of new to all of this. In one of the slides that you presented, Audra, you talked about how 60% of the impact to our air quality is outside of our control. Could you help me understand what the stuff that's out of our control is that's impacting that? Not that it will change anything, but just because I'm curious. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Councilwoman, I think what we call that background or transport ozone, it comes from somewhere else specifically. And so it's not originating in this region. It's not from a source originating here locally. It's being transported through the miracles of meteorology this way. And as the Councilwoman already mentioned, Councilwoman White, what makes that even more difficult for us is that we have a really plentiful ingredient for ozone, and that's sun, which exacerbates the issue. Most of this transport's coming from Asia, as well as those to the west of us, and is without our control to be able to locally do something about or mitigate.
I was just wondering if it was dust from some of the areas. I know we have a couple of geographics where farmland is not planted, and consequently, when the wind blows, the dust particles end up somewhere on our side of town from that when they're coming east to west. And just wondering if that was one of the issues that's involved in that.
Chairwoman Pastor, members of the board, Councilwoman, we also have a PM10 or dust issue in this region. They're two different things. And so that chart I showed earlier, we're non-attainment for several air quality matters. The one of most concern that we featured today was ozone, and where ozone is coming from and or what percentage of it is locally controlled or mitigated. We also have a dust issue and implications associated with it. For PM10, we're in a desert. That also isn't an inconvenient truth as this matter, but that's part also of this program that I want to emphasize, is that paving of unpaved roads, street sweepers for which your cities pursue federal funding and partnerships with MAG to be able to deliver are all part of our PM10 non-attainment portfolio of air quality solutions as well. So there are a couple of different air quality matters for which this plan helps to address, which is why it's so important, in addition to, of course, the multimodal and mobility issues for which we're serving our constituents.
And to bring it back to kind of the board's role, one of the important things that Valley Metro has done over many, many years, and you continue to do, has to do with the emissions from the fleet. So one of the biggest controllable causes of ozone is tailpipe emissions from all vehicles. So when you all approve moving to CNG or LNG buses or cleaner burning diesel, or you're converting a diesel to an electric and all that. That's really part of a regional air quality strategy as well as, efficiency for your fleet. So we don't often say that, but thank you to Valley Metro for being part of that effort to decrease what's coming out of the tailpipes of all of our vehicles. And so, when you're approving those, that's a really important part of reducing ozone as well.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank all of you from MAG for coming and helping me to be smarter and understanding this. I know you guys spend a lot of time and effort helping those of us that aren't always in the know as much as other people. But I just thank you for your time and effort and putting that presentation together. It's really helpful for me.
Chairwoman Pastor, members of the board, councilwoman, that door is always open. We're operating a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation with our friends at Valley Metro. If there is anything we can ever do to provide information or resources, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to ensure that you feel as comfortable as possible with the information you need to, of course, service your communities as best you can.
Councilmember Littlefield.
Councilmember Littlefield, you need to unmute your computer so that we can hear you.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I just saw the little hand there. One of the things Scottsdale's had a concern with over the last year or so is the inflationary factors that we're all facing with construction, and the ability to build even just within our own communities when we have bond packages and programs and stuff. Costs have inflated tremendously. Do you have an estimate on how that's going to affect build out for this? And will the 1.5% sales tax, will that be enough to cover the increases not only in materials but also in personnel?
Madam Chair, members of the board, that's a great question. It's something that certainly on the current freeway program and current arterial program keeps me awake at night. We certainly, one of the consequences of our booming economy is that we've seen particularly high inflation in labor and construction costs. As you all know, at a local level, waiting to see where that goes in the future. I think from a plan perspective, one of the pieces of assurance that we can provide you is that when we initiated development of our plan, we looked back at what we did in Prop 400, took lessons learned. And so one of the areas where we were extraordinarily conservative was in our revenue estimation. And so that in and of itself does provide us with some cushion. Moreover, one of the other activities that we invested significant resources into was the development of cost estimates. So certainly this unprecedented inflation does provide challenges. I think we do feel comfortable that we've positioned ourselves as well as possible to be able to address those challenges. And then certainly over a 20-year period, we're going to see fluctuations and hopefully costs come back down to reality at some point. But from a plan perspective, we do feel comfortable about where we're at heading into enabling legislation.
Thank you.
I don't see anything on the virtual platform. And right now, I have one last question. Every one of us know how to run campaigns. And every one of us knows what we need to do to reach our population. So what can we do?
I think right now, the campaign is largely focused on 91 people. I've had my numbers up. 60 representatives, 30 senators, and 1 governor. So where you have relationships, and I'm sure that you must, with the representatives and senators and the governor and any staff now, you're telling the stories, as Councilman Harris did, of your constituents and the importance of transit, and just to get the message out that transit is just not for other people. And that's a lot of what the worldview is that we're encountering, is that transit's for somebody else. most people want to ride on a freeway. That's sort of the prevailing view. And we know that that's not true. And so where you have lived experience and your constituents have lived experience to tell your friends or colleagues or whoever is in the legislature, right now, that's, I think, the most important thing. There's going to be a moment where we are going to need to shift Councilman Pastor to that broader campaign effort. Absolutely. I think right now the campaign has to focus on 1700 West Washington and the 9th floor, although the governor is very supportive. The governor said at a transit conference, she expects Prop 400 to come to her desk with transit in it, substantial transit. So I don't worry about the governor, but it's in the Senate and the House where your relationships and just pinging people is going to help us, I think.
Okay, everybody has their assignments. Well, thank you, Meg. Thank you for all the work you're doing the 24/7 that is happening. We will go to work within our own network and be able to tell our stories. And this was a great study session, and I thank you for doing this. We will adjourn the study session and we will come back in 5 minutes. Thank you.
1 minute, 1 minute. All right, here we go.
Almost a year. I'm gonna spend some money in your city next week.
Are you?
What are you doing?
We got another show at the, music.
Oh, all right, here we go. Everybody. All right, I'm going to convene the meeting and welcome members to the April meeting. Pat, will you now call the roll? If a committee member would like to ask a question or make a comment during the meeting, please type your comment in the box and it will be read aloud and answered. Thank you, Pat.
Good afternoon, everyone. City of Avondale, Councilmember Maxine White.
Present.
City of Buckeye, Councilmember Clay Goodman.
Present.
City of Chandler, Councilmember O.D. Harris. City of El Mirage, Councilmember Monica Dorsey.
Here.
Town of Fountain Hills, Vice Mayor Peggy McMahon. Town of Gilbert, Mayor Bridget Peterson. I see her on the WebEx. City of Glendale, Councilmember Lauren Talmachoff.
Here.
City of Goodyear, Councilmember Bill Stipp.
Present.
Maricopa County Supervisor Jack Sellers.
Here.
City of Mesa, Vice Mayor Francisco Heredia.
Here.
City of Peoria, Councilmember John Edwards.
Here.
City of Phoenix, Councilmember Laura Pastor.
Here.
Town of Queen Creek, Vice Mayor Jeff Brown.
I am here.
City of Scottsdale, Vice Mayor Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
City of Surprise, Councilmember Allie Klein. Here. City of Tempe, Vice Mayor Jennifer Adams for RPTA today. And then City Manager Andrew Ching representing Valley Metro Rail.
Present.
City of Tolleson, Councilmember Adolfo Gomez. Town of Wickenburg, Rui Pereira. And Town of Youngtown, Michael Lavault, Mayor Michael Lavault.
Yes, Pat, I'm here.
Thank you, Chair. We can proceed.
Thank you, Pat. All meeting attendees, please mute your computer, microphone, or phone. Public comment. The public will be provided with an opportunity at this time to address the committees on the non-agenda items and all action agenda items for the joint RPTA and VMR meeting agendas. Up to 3 minutes will be provided per speaker unless the chair allows more at their discretion. A total of 15 minutes for all speakers will be provided. Pat, do we have public comment?
Mr. Crowley?
I've been out on the rail and the bus, and this is what I've been able to discern from that. I didn't see where this new plan addresses volume or congestion in that, and I didn't hear them point out that if you are in the serious violation, they shut down funding for their roads and their freeways. So it is a part of what's supposed to be done. And Bill, you were wrong. The original plan had circulators and connectors, and it was the city of Fountain Hills who insisted on that, saying that in her community, they needed the connectivity of both the circulator and the main road. And how long did it take for you guys to get a route? Well, you still don't have one, do you? You've got connector for the express, but you don't have a route going into Fountain Hills. I don't see where in the upgrades of the plan and such, one of the things in there was a Bell Road to the 303. So that 10 miles right now from the 101 to the 303 isn't, and we'll never get a bus. What? One of the things that they pointed out slightly was that people at the legislature don't want rail. Well, if the legislation that goes through doesn't have rail, are you planning for that? As in, is there a chance you could bifurcate the agencies now rather than in the future when it has to be done? When I look at the amount of monies that you spend on staff, 40%, and there are 1,100 bus stops that are just a friggin' sign in your communities, how is this doing what we put on as a plan? The plan was to get as many buses out there as we could, as many routes as could be done, and use the grid to maximize the citizenry. If you noticed in that thing, there was one route going through Gilbert. There are 400 square miles. Mesa, 2/3 of your city has how much bus service? 0. I don't see it being predatory in the new plan to get those routes done. With the 1,100 not having stops, or the stops not having shelters, and the buses, et cetera, I go 40% for staff. And as Mr. Steiger said a long time ago, an agency will do everything it possibly can to exist, sometimes even getting the job done. The job for you people was to get buses and bus service to the whole region. And when you look at Gilbert, and it isn't just bunny rabbits and cotton fields, where's their buses and why aren't you planning right? Thanks.
Thank you, Blue. Item number 2, Chief Executive Officer's Report. Jessica Medford-Miller, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good afternoon. I'm going to give you a few brief highlights on some of our performance metrics. I will move through them relatively quickly. We have begun having conversations and doing deep dive performance updates with our member cities through sub-regional meetings. We held such a meeting on Monday afternoon with West Valley, and we're continuing to seek feedback from city staff on the format and the content delivered in those forums. We're doing the same within East Valley and with our rail cities as well. So today I'll just focus on those performance metrics that we are expending significant effort working to improve. The first is on-time performance with bus. Bus on-time performance has remained steady in recent months. However, it falls significantly short of our stated goal of 92%. We are both working with our contractors to evaluate our on-time performance. We're also conducting a system-wide running time study, which is basically an evaluation of how long on every route it takes to get from end to end at different times of day. This has not been undertaken in a significant amount of time. It is due. I expect adjustments to service schedules will be made following that process. On light rail, we saw a significant improvement in light rail beginning in the month of February when we created a new schedule and added end-to-end running time. We are a street running system, and as such, our travel time on our light rail and streetcar systems is prone to change over time, as do traffic patterns. We're also working with our rail member city staff to work on prioritizing improvements at some of those signals that give priority to light rail. We'll continue to evaluate this. We'll also have a new rail schedule, of course, upon the implementation of our Northwest Phase 2 expansion, which is scheduled to open late this year or early next year. Streetcar on-time performance actually remains quite high, as does ridership and customer satisfaction, by the way. On-time performance with paratransit has been steady. We're still a little bit short of our 95% goal, but we're working with our contractor Transdev to drive improvement in on-time performance and customer service. With respect to our complaint rate, we constantly monitor our customer feedback. We saw a little bit of a spike in the month of February. We think that has to do with a lot of visitors to our valley in the month of February who had questions. And as I mentioned, We also implemented a new rail schedule on February 4th, and that took a number of our customers off guard. Ridership continues to hold steady. We are working to look at our sensors and our tools. We get ridership from automated passenger counters on light rail and streetcar. They're infrared sensors above the doors. And on the bus, it is the fare box. We have found some issues with our ridership. I'll continue to keep this board updated, especially if we find any change in that ridership trend. It seems in recent months, we should have seen some higher numbers that aren't quite materializing. I will tell you, there are more customers out there every day, it seems, on our buses and trains, just as there are drivers on our regional roads right now. So we are seeing that and we'll continue to report back. We have been talking for almost a year now about workforce shortages. Give you an update on our operator vacancy rate, and then I'll highlight some of the areas where we continue to struggle a little bit. We've done quite well. We have come a long way with respect to operator vacancy rate. When we started this conversation on some of our contracts, we were missing as much as 10% of our scheduled service. We've now got that to inside of 2% because of increases in our workforce. Taking a look at that specific trend by month, I want to highlight our struggles. Namely, in December, we saw a spike in operator vacancy rate on our West Valley bus contract. We are working very closely with our contractor, Total Transit, at the national, regional, and local level. We had an in-depth meeting with them this past Tuesday morning regarding their performance improvement plan, focusing in on operator and mechanic vacancy rates. We have given them specific instructions on prioritization for service so that we can execute as much of our scheduled service in the West Valley as possible. I'll give you a preview a little bit later in the update on other specific measures we're taking on the West Valley contract. We also just this last month saw a little bit of a spike in our rail operator vacancy with ACI. This is light rail and streetcar operators. We had a big hiring surge and we were able to ramp up to full workforce in advance of Super Bowl. We have lost some of those brand new team members, but we do have 8 operators currently in training. I am confident we'll continue to meet our scheduled service. With respect to vehicle maintenance, we have come a long way with our inspectors who actually work on our light rail vehicles and streetcars. Mechanic vacancies have fallen. Electromechanics, these are individuals who work on those light rail vehicles. This continues to be an area of shortage for us. These are direct Valley Metro employees, not contractors. We're continuing to work with Rob Rosenberg, our Deputy Director of Maintenance and State of Good Repair, Penny Lynch, and the Human Resources team to identify and execute effective strategies for retention and recruitment for electromechanics. On wayside maintenance, these are also Valley Metro personnel who are responsible for maintaining the wayside rail system. That's our track, our signals, and our overhead catenary system. We continue to struggle with traction power electricians. There's a theme here. We're having a hard time attracting electricians. Same is true of the building trades industries right now. We're going to continue to focus on this long term. We collectively have to develop a better pipeline for attracting craftspeople to full-time Valley Metro roles. Business is booming in construction across the Valley. We do have a hard time competing with private sector. Many of these positions are also third shift. We perform our maintenance out on the alignment, mostly when we're not running trains. With respect to support staff, these are our cleaners, our customer service team members, and our security personnel. We have come a long way since this conversation began in filling those necessary vacancies. The vehicles are cleaner, the stations are cleaner. Our customers have noticed the increased presence of field security. We're working to sustain those workforce levels, but also ensure that these relatively new teams are still providing the high level of service that we want to see. So we're doing a little bit of course correction, including with our partners of Allied Universal Security on the performance of our fare inspectors and guards that we have out on the system, but we are glad to have them here. Just a note on accessible transportation services, ridership, and cost. This is paratransit and ride choice. Our costs have remained steady. We had a little bit of a decrease in paratransit cost in the last couple of months, while ride choice saw a corollary increase. We continue to see a reduction in paratransit trips and an increase in ride choice trips, reflecting consumer preference. And I think just the flexibility of that ride choice program, which can be demand responsive. We've talked about this in a couple forums in this room, but that is the direction we're heading with our paratransit service as well, aiming to be more responsive and giving our customers greater flexibility. It says missed miles, I don't have the slide, missed miles for bus, as I mentioned, we're right around 2% right now. A lot of those service miles are happening in West Valley. We have come a long way with our East Valley bus operations and maintenance contract. Okay, here's an update on our National Express contract in West Valley. National Express is currently operating under a performance improvement plan. This is in accordance with our contract. The areas that we are focusing are listed here. I want to call out in particular vehicle trip completion. This has to do with maintenance. Revenue service completed. This has to do with workforce, as well as cleanliness, condition, and then customer complaints, which are a reflection of performance in all of these areas. We have made great strides in cleanliness of vehicles. We're on the path when it comes to maintenance. We have just engaged in third-party contracting to bring additional operators, both from other National Express properties, but then also using a staffing firm to bring additional operators to this contract. We continue to meet with National Express every single day, week, and month at that local, regional, and national level. We will see improvement in this project, in this contract, or we will leverage all of our contract tools to change our outcome. Update on East Valley. So East Valley is going very well. They are also operating under a performance improvement plan. Here, we're really focused on on-time performance, preventable accidents. Still revenue service completed, though, as I mentioned, we've come a long way in the workforce there. We're almost fully staffed, so we are having very few missed trips. We're working with them now on some of the finer but essential points of scheduling, on-time performance, early and late departures, and running times. We are on track. I don't know if we're fully staffed today. If not, we are real close. Come a long way. A year ago, we were missing 10% of these trips. Both the East and West Valley contract performance is not long for us. Our West Valley contract actually expires June 30th of 2024, which is right around the corner. This board authorized us to develop and release an RFP that is multimodal in nature. That'll include fixed route bus, demand responsive service, including paratransit. We are developing that right now. That draws from pieces of our recent paratransit procurement, as well as our recent East Valley bus operations and maintenance scope of work. Member city staff is engaged in that process. We anticipate releasing the request for proposals in September after developing the RFP and moving that through the City of Phoenix procurement process. We will come back to this board in February of next year for a request to approve a contract. We will have selected a preferred vendor in advance of that. And then on July 21st, 2024, right around the corner, service begins with our new contractor. In East Valley, we're also in a procurement process. A proposal review is underway. We received proposals last month. We are also working with member city staff on this procurement process. We will conduct interviews with preferred firms on May 25th. We'll come back to this board in August. We don't have a July board cycle, so we'll identify and recommend a firm to this board. We'll issue a notice of intent to award to the firm so that we can begin having conversations and preparing for a January 1st, 2024 in-service date on East Valley bus operations and maintenance. It's one of our biggest contracts. Shifting gears from operation of service to construction of service. We are now 86% complete on our Northwest Phase 2 extension. That is our 3-mile extension. We'll begin testing and certification later this summer. So our work with our partners at FTA and our project management oversight is already well underway. The major components that will advance our traction power substations, which are near complete, and our at-grade and elevated stations are really coming together. When you visit those stations, it really does feel like a train is going to whiz by any moment. We are almost there. Photo on the left is Mountain View and 25th Avenue, and you can see the fantastic art. I love that. look at that and want to make a wish. That's a depiction of both a dandelion and then a bouncing tennis ball if you see it in profile view. And then the photo on the right, that's at 25th and Dunlap. This shows the curved track work. There's a lot of really exciting track geometry if you are a transit geek like me on this northwest face too. We are ending this project at the Metro Center station on the west side of I-17. The photo on the left is some time ago. We have made significant progress. We have a 4-story parking garage constructed there. The bridge over I-17 has been constructed. We are working, actually, we meet on Monday with the developers of the Metro Center Mall site so that we can ensure that we're working hand in glove with them and with the city of Phoenix to create wonderful pedestrian connections between the light rail station and the bus transit center and that new mixed use development that they're planning. Very exciting. On the south side, we have moved on to the southern portion of the South Central Hub and downtown hub project. We're 67% complete, so making great progress. The majority of the heavy civil work is done here in downtown, but we're continuing with station finishes, traction power substations. And then on the southern part of the corridor, we're continuing, these are pretty recent photos actually, we're continuing with utility relocation, roadway and hardscape work. Next is these images I think are more recent and pretty interesting. We just did a tour with our South Central Construction Advisory Board. We have what we call construction advisory boards for the South Central project, the Northwest project. We had it for Tempe streetcar as well. These are members of the community and local businesses who provide us feedback on how we're doing interfacing with that community through the construction process. And on Northwest Phase 2, we're advancing that conversation to how we can interface with the community as we anticipate the opening, how we can connect with businesses, employers, schools, and other institutions to promote the adoption of transit along the corridor. We'll soon shift gears on the South Central corridor also. Next slide, please. Our Tempe streetcar, not to be forgotten, it will turn 1 next year. Tempe streetcar was actually recognized on April 1st with the Transportation Innovation Project of the Year by Women's Transportation Seminar. Congratulations to City of Tempe on that recognition. The streetcar is also being considered for Arizona Forward's Environmental Excellence Award, and we will find out the outcome of that nomination later this month. We'll continue to keep you posted. We discussed air quality in this room earlier, and we are currently leveraging electric trains and streetcars and mostly compressed natural gas buses across our fleet. We have begun the process of what we call fleet transition to zero tailpipe emissions vehicles. We are nearing the end of the development of a fleet transition plan, which we developed in partnership with consulting firm WSP. This is actually now a federal requirement. It's just good business and strategy, but you also have to have a fleet replacement plan now to qualify for federal low or no emissions vehicle funding. Earlier this month, we submitted a low or no emissions vehicle funding application to the Federal Transit Administration. That grant program, if fully funded, would support 20 battery electric buses, our initial charging stations, necessary facility electrical upgrades, and workforce development. The total cost of that program is about $27.7 million, and our federal request is $13.3 million of that. We also have about $10.2 million in congressionally directed funding focused on our fleet transition plan. Our intention through our transition plan is to invest those funds and I should say, the Tempe facility is the focus of the Low-No grant. The congressionally directed funding would be directed to the Mesa Greenfield facility to begin the build out of the infrastructure and acquisition of the initial vehicles. The march towards zero emissions is long. We typically keep our buses for about 12 years. We're going to have to continue to purchase some CNG buses in the near term to replace those which are due for retirement right now, because there's a lead time on the battery electric bus, plus we've got to build the infrastructure, but this is all part of our long-term fleet transition plan. As we move forward and we get the results of these low nos, we'll begin to put a horizon date on our transition plan. In addition to battery electric, I want to add that we are also looking very closely at hydrogen fuel cell. Long term, I think that we have a future there. Short term, right now, the cost of the energy, the fuel is pretty high. And so that would impact the operating costs for those vehicles, which would be borne by our local cities or our regional public transportation funds. So we've determined that now's not the time to enter that market, but that might come in the near future as we increase our supply of hydrogen. And we've got some 2 plants being constructed right now in Arizona. It just hasn't borne fruit yet. Okay, just a note on budget development schedule. We conducted a detailed presentation to staff earlier this week through the financial working group and RTAG. I think that went very well. We've gotten positive feedback. We will have a detailed discussion again with the Audit Finance Subcommittee on May 4th, and we will present to this board via a study session on May 18th on our FY24 budget. Couple of other fun highlights. Yesterday we rose and rode. April is actually Valley Bike Month. We started years ago with a bike day and then a bike week, and now it is more into Valley Bike Month. So several of my colleagues and I rode with 300 of our friends yesterday throughout downtown, ending with a celebration near the Orpheum Theater. It was a wonderful day. It's great to see people turning out in person and really focusing on the multimodal work that Valley Metro does. A part of what we do is our van pool, our ride share, but also encouraging bicycle and pedestrian options for travel. So that was attended by Mayor Gallego and other dignitaries across the valley. Great discussions about the need for safety and the provision of bike and ped options in our regional transportation plan. It's in that MAG plan too. Shifting just a little bit. And I'll conclude with this. We're in a period of transition across our organization. We are focusing on our operational performance. We are developing the maintenance and operations programs that are going to sustain our system and our organization as we shift from just constructing and operating a smaller system to operating a bigger system and to maintaining that system in perpetuity. I've realigned our executive leadership team, and in addition to the talented team members that we have today, we're introducing a couple of new positions. The first is Chief Transportation Officer. After a nationwide search, we selected Michael Powell as our Chief Transportation Officer. Michael will be responsible for leading the delivery of all of our transportation services. That is bus, paratransit, demand responsive service, light rail, and streetcar. He comes with almost 30 years of transportation delivery experience. He spent most of his career with New York City Transit. Most recently, he is the Deputy Chief Operations Officer at Minneapolis Metro, where he's also leading implementation of light rail expansion and bus rapid transit introduction projects. Michael is a strong professional. He cannot wait to join us here, and he will arrive on May 8th. Our maintenance program will be reconfigured under a single team. Darren Curry will become our first Chief Maintenance Officer. I worked with Mr. Curry for many years in St. Louis. He is a fantastic industry lead. He will be tasked with building our comprehensive maintenance program for all of our transit assets. That includes trains, buses, vans, stations, and operating facilities. He'll work alongside our existing team, including our Deputy Director of State of Good Repair, Rob Rosenberg. He will also be responsible for completing our federally required, completing and sustaining our transit asset management program. I am delighted to have this kind of talent join our existing strong team. We've got 3 more executive positions that we will be filling in very short order. So stay tuned for announcements, probably at the next couple of board meetings. This concludes my report, Madam Chair. Or do we have next? Just dates. Okay. A quick look ahead at the dates. I mentioned May 4th, we will have Audit Finance Subcommittee. This is that in-depth budget review. May 3rd, TMC RMC. May 18th, Board of Directors. That's our deep dive budget review conversation. June 7th and 8th, TMC RMC and AFS. June 22nd, Board of Directors meetings. This will likely be a full agenda with approvals because we will have a recess for the July cycle and reconvene in August. Now that concludes my report, Madam Chair, members of the board. May I answer any questions?
Any questions? I don't see any. I'm moving to item number 3, Audit and Finance Subcommittee update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The minutes, just as a reminder, the minutes are always included in our board packet, so I will be brief. We are in the middle of our internal audits. There's a slight pause for the month of April and May as the team concludes their work for the year, getting ready to bring their final presentations for this year's audits to us. We did spend a considerable amount of time on the FY24 operating and capital budget for Valley Metro, RPTA and Valley Metro Rail. This past month, we looked at new initiatives. They are few, which is good, but they're strong. So we did not spend nearly the amount of time this year as we did last year on this particular component. In the month of May, we are going to look at the ongoing and inflationary adjustments for Valley Metro, so that you can be assured that when you see the final budget in June, that the Audit and Finance Subcommittee has really taken a very comprehensive look at this budget. So if you or your staff does not have time to do as deep a dive, please know that the Audit and Finance Subcommittee has absolutely been in the deep end. We get a little bit of update on the intergovernmental agreements and contract change orders. Meeting was brief, as are my remarks. So pending any questions, that ends my report.
I see no questions. Doing a great job, Steve. Thanks. Item number 4, minutes. The minutes from March 16th, 2023 are presented for approval. Are there any questions, comments? Is there a motion?
Second.
Okay, I got a Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Stipp. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that are not, the ayes take it. Motion passes. Oh, I didn't do a discussion, but I did questions and asked before that. I hope I don't get in trouble.
You do you.
I don't think anybody had any. Item number 5, fiscal year 2022 transit performance report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'll invite Erin Keneal of our planning team to deliver a presentation to you. This is a performance report that is retrospective. It ends for the period of ending June 30th of 2022. The data I presented to you is of the last several months, and in May and next month's packet, you will receive a quarterly report that does contain more recent information. Erin.
Thank you, Jessica. Madam Chair, members of the board, I am Erin Keneal, and I am here to present the Transit Performance Report for fiscal year 22. As a reminder, this is a report that includes regional data for fiscal year 22 that spans from July 1st of 2021 through June 30th of 2022. During that time, we saw an increase in total boardings of about 14%. 70% of those boardings were found on the bus. Valley Metro Rail sees 3.77 boardings per mile, which gives it the highest of any mode. Paratransit trips have a high on-time performance of 90%, and Vanpool users pay an average of $5.18 a trip, giving it an 86 fare box recovery. After seeing a decrease in ridership, we are seeing an upwards trend from fiscal year 21 of over 4 million riders. Operating costs continue to climb from fiscal year 21 to $8.35 due to contract changes and the overall increases, such as fuel costs. I will now speak on bus trends, followed by the rail and the streetcar. Bus boardings went up year over year, 2 million riders, or a 10% increase. After losing ridership due to COVID for the last 2 years, we are seeing a weekly ridership have a 14% increase. While weekday ridership is up, we are still seeing a decrease in Saturday boardings at around 5%. Local service is still down while circulators are trending upwards. Sunday boardings, similar to Saturday, we are seeing a small decrease at around 5%. After reinstating front door boardings in the early months of fiscal year 22, we saw a dip in riders taking extra trips on Saturdays and Sundays, which we see less of an impact on the weekday trips. The average fare collected per trip is up to 65 cents, which is on par with fiscal year 20. Front door boarding was reinstated in October of fiscal year 22, giving fiscal year 22 9 months of fare collection. On-time performance is down from fiscal year 22 as post-COVID traffic returns to the road. As Jessica mentioned, Valley Metro is currently conducting a runtime analysis to increase the on-time performance. I will now speak on the rail trends followed by streetcar. Rail saw a 30% increase from fiscal year 21, which is the highest of any mode. The average fare collected per trip is up from fiscal year 21 to 62 cents. We saw an increase of fares purchased post-pandemic compared to the pandemic levels. On-time performance is down to 72%. During this time, single tracking was put into place for construction for nearly 3 months. Valley Metro was proactive and adjusted the schedule, which is more recently reflecting higher on-time performance, and operations is working with cities for signal time changes. Streetcar started service on May 20th, giving it 42 days during fiscal year 22. In that short amount of time, we saw just over 60,000 boardings with ridership growth since then. And lastly, paratransit trends continue to see a high on-time performance, sitting just over 90%. While seeing a decrease in operating cost per revenue hour, we are seeing a higher transition towards ride choice because of the benefit that it provides for the rider. That concludes my presentation, and I will take any questions.
Councilmember Stipp.
All right, so I'll be really brief. You don't have to go back, but just if you board members have their packet, slides 3 and 4, which is the ridership significant decrease and the cost per operating mile, which is seeing an increase. That has been a problem for the organization for a number of years. We've been working very closely with staff from the Audit and Finance Subcommittee perspective on how do we bring the cost per mile down while we're going through this operational period. I think just to kind of reassure everybody, and hopefully Jessica won't disagree with this statement, but we are putting together all of these studies that we're getting ready to do are really geared at both of these, increasing ridership and bringing our cost per mile down, kind of to just make sure that we are running as efficient an operation as we possibly can. And that has really been the goal of the Audit and Finance Subcommittee for the last 3 or 4 years anyway, to try to bring those two pieces together so that we can be a financially sustainable model going forward. So for those of you that are new to the board, know that this is not brand new information, but we've been working very hard on it. And now we are, as an organization, we're taking very positive steps forward with the implementation of the studies that we have previously approved going forward for this next fiscal year.
Thank you.
Thank you for your work. I now have item number 6. Does anybody have any questions on item number 6? It's travel expenditures and solicitations. It's in your packet. If not, I'm going to move it. I don't see any. Okay. Item number 6. Item number 7, report on current events, suggested future agenda items. Anyone? All right. Next meeting is Thursday, May 18th, 2023 at 11:15. Thank you. Now we lead into the RPTA meeting. I'm going to convene the meeting and welcome the members to April meeting. Pat, I don't need to do a roll call. I can keep going. Okay.
Mr. Crowley, I have those comments and I will address them. We need to keep moving.
Okay. Okay. Item number 1, consent agenda. The consent agenda is presented for action. Anybody have any questions? If not, can I have a motion?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Tomachov, Councilmember White. I have a Motion and a second. Any discussion? Did it. Woo. Okay. No discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It's not. The ayes take it. Motion passes. Item number 2, proposed October 2023 service changes. Jessica Medford Miller, please introduce this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The details of the proposed October 2023 service changes, which will undergo a public process, are included in your packet under item number 2. If there are any questions from the board, I would ask Joe Gregory, our Manager of Service Planning, to address those questions.
Are there any questions? Joe, you got off easy. Item number 2 is for information only. If we do, we'll send them to you. Item number 3, FYI 24 through 28 Short Range Transit Program. Would you like to introduce this item?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This item is a summary of planned changes to our short-range transportation program for the years fiscal year 2024 through 2028. They are also enumerated in your packet under agenda item number 3. No presentation is available today. We would again be able to answer questions. So Joe, I hope you didn't go far. Yeah. Any questions?
Joe, second time around. Good job, doing well. I request a motion to accept the FY 24-28 Short Range Transit Program Report and direct the CEO to share it with MAG in support of the Transportation Improvement Program process.
Chair
So
Bridget
moved.
Peterson, move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion from Mayor Peterson and then second from Vice Mayor McMahon. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. The ayes take it. Item number 4, Transit Life Cycle Program, bus update. Take it away, Jessica Medford Miller.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At our last monthly board meeting, Ken Kessler, our Chief Financial Officer, provided a detailed presentation on the Transit Life Cycle Program and the specific updates proposed here. The last update to the Transit Life Cycle Program and board action associated with that was in 2019. It is now time to update the TLCP once again, and some of that relates to the implementation of our short-range transportation program. Mr. Kessler is available to make a brief presentation if any board members wish to hear that.
Any presentations? We got it. I request a motion and a second to approve the TLCP update. Councilmember Harris, a motion and a second.
Second.
Councilmember Tomachas is the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? I hear no nays. Motion carried. Report on current events, suggested future agenda items. I don't hear any. Thank you. Pat, can I make a suggestion? Is that when somebody submits some questions regarding the RPTA or any of the other ones, can we just have the questions or can they be read?
Are you talking about from
Public
board,
comment, in the
public comment? Yes.
Okay.
So,
So that we at least have it on record. I mean, I
Yes.
know it's on record, but we can hear it.
yes, I will do that.
Thank you. Item number 6, next meeting, Thursday, May 18th, 2023 at 11:15 a.m. And Vice Mayor Heredia is taking over the network.
I didn't hear that, but I feel it.
Yes, the RPTA meeting has adjourned.
We've adjourned. I'm rushing. I'm trying to get everybody out, in and out. Safe travels.
All right, Pat, are we ready? All right. We'll get started with the Valley Metro Rail meeting. Convene this meeting and welcome all members to this meeting. The first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda is presented for action. Any questions from committee members?
Did I have a presentation? No, I'm just.
No.
No.
You can't.
I'm just joking. It's a joke. It's a joke. I've seen it.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Request a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So move.
Second. Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays? Ayes have it. Item number 2, the 2023 Transit Life Cycle Program rail update. Jessica Medford-Miller.
Much like the RPTA conversation, we did do a deep dive on the Transit Lifecycle Program update with the VMR board last month. If there are any questions, Ken Kessler can review this presentation.
Any questions, comments?
Ken, are you ready?
Just joking.
No questions. Request a motion and a second to forward to the director's approvals.
So, go ahead.
Motion by Odie Harris.
Second.
Councilmember Pastor, second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Item number 3, report on current events, suggested future agenda items. Any current events or reports? Hearing none. Item number 4, next meeting is Thursday, May 18th at 11:15. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.